Greetings! Welcome to another dark and dreary day here in Northampton. It's Thursday, which means it's Battle of the Debuts Day, and we're going to look today at two of the thrash metal bands that are part of the Big Four. Obviously, last year we looked at Megadeth and Metallica. So today we're going to look at Slayer and Anthrax. So the two sort of they're these big four. You know, these are the two that seem to get pushed back onto the back burner. So we're going to put them against each other today, and as usual, whoever comes release first goes first. In this case, it is Slayer. Now, Slayer are an American thrash band from Huntington Park in California. They were formed in 1981 by guitarists Kerry King and Jeff Hanneman, drummer Dave Lombardo, and bassist vocalist Tom Araya. As I say, it's their fast, aggressive music style made them part of the Big Four. They're a band that I've never really followed, but you know, we can't like them all. So I haven't got anything by Slayer at all. But I thought this would be a fun one to do because these are the four bands that I'm not a great fan of. But I might change my mind now. So, their debut album was called Show No Mercy, and it was released in December 1983 by Metal Blade Records. Brian Slagle signed them to the label after watching them perform in the song Phantom of the Opera. This was a self-financed album, which was put together by the savings of Tom Araya, who was employed as a respiratory therapist, and money borrowed from Kerry King's father. I'm sure they paid them back now. So on here we've got, of course, Tom Araya bass and vocals, Kerry King on the guitars, Jeff Hanneman on guitars, Dave Lombardo on drums. Production was Brian Slagle, and engineer was Bill Meteoro, and they mixed the album as well. So the first track on here is a little track called Evil Has No Boundaries. Okay, I've got to admit, I think this track does sound a little amateurish. It's not very coherent, but the guitar solo is sort of, it doesn't seem it's been thought out. It's just go and do it. It's not a very good track, in my opinion. Then we got the Anarchists. This is better. This is a little bit more structured. It's not a bad track actually. I didn't mind that one. Die by the Sword. It does sound a little bit one-dimensional. It doesn't seem to flow. There's no variation. The drum beats are all the same, and the guitar solos don't sound different. Then we get Fight Till Death. This is a weird one because Dave Lombardo is playing so fast. I think the rest of the band are trying to catch up with him. The timing is not coherent enough. Okay, then we get Metal Storm, Face the Slayer. Now this is quite good. I think this is the best track on the album. It's very coherent, very solid track, very heavy. But it sounds right. Then we get Black Magic. Yes, you've still got them sort of riffs that go through the whole of the tracks, but this one does sound better. Yeah, it seems like as the album's going on, the tracks are getting better. Then we get Tormentor, one of the better tracks on here. It's got more of that plod instead of that 100 miles an hour feel to it. A little bit more structure. The Final Command, back to the crash bang wallop style. It just doesn't sound good. You know, I mean, I've heard of some of their later stuff, and you know, thankfully they got better as time went on. But this is their very first album. Crionics, a little bit different. It's got different riffs in it. It's got a bit of a melody to it, which is really good. It's just old-fashioned thrash metal, but it's got a little bit of structure. And then the last track is the title track, Show No Mercy. It's just like a lot of the tracks on here, just very, very one-dimensional. So out of the big four, Slayer have never been one of my favourites. This track has got a few good tracks on it, but they all sort of sound the same. There's no variation. The guitar solos, to me, are just on the spur of the moment. No thoughts got out of some of the tracks. I don't think there's been no thought gone into the solo. I think it took them till the right on the South of Heaven before they really got into their groove. But it's a debut album. Everyone has to start somewhere. You could see a little bit of potential in this album, but it still remains probably one of their weakest albums. So that's what I thought. What did the critics think? Well, although the band did not have enough time to sell any records while touring, the album became Metal Blade's highest selling release. 5,000 copies was the label's average. To Show No Mercy sold between 15,000 and 20,000 copies in the United States. It went on to sell 15,000 overseas, but it was met with polarised opinions. Some recent reviews, it came to be considered a classic album. In 1984, Dave Dixon of Kerrang crushed the album, defining it as pure, unadulterated junk, while Bernard Doe of Metal Forces called the record one of the heaviest and fastest and most awesome albums of all time. Martin Popoff praised Show Mercy for being seminal as Metallica's Kill 'Em All, but in a defiant statement, and for the art of speed metal and inspiring to new bands that expand the limits of metal. However, he found the record stiff and one-dimensional, just like I do, with its style laid down, stiffing arrangements. I mean, it's them guitar solos. It's just noise. It's not on the solo. So AllMusic gave it 2 stars. Collector's Guide to Heavy Metal gave it 7 out of 10. Kerrang unfavourable. Metal Forces 9 out of 10. Rock Hard 9 out of 10. The Rolling Stone Album Guide 3 stars, and Sputnik Music 4 out of 5. Okay, let's have a look at the nuts and bolts of this one. Song quality. There's some interesting songs on here. I mean, they're a thrash metal band, so you're not going to get anything romantic or anything. But I'll give it a 3 out of 5. Production. The production on this is very amateurish. I know there's a lot of Slayer fans out there, but I have heard better Slayer albums, and it's very one-dimensional, as I've said, and even Martin Popoff said. So I'm going to give production 3 out of 10. Reception. It was a mixed one, wasn't it? Some thought it was brilliant, some thought it was terrible. I remember when I first heard this, I wasn't overly impressed. myself, and one of my mates thought it was okay, but he's now admitted that it's an album that he doesn't go to. I mean, he's a big Slayer fan, and he doesn't go to this one very often. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Cover design, it's just a really good sort of thrash metal style cover. Makes a statement. It's very eye-catching. So I'm going to give that a total of 4 out of 5. So for Show No Mercy by Slayer, we have a total of 13 out of 20. So who's next? Well, it's the last of the big four, and it is Anthrax. Now, Anthrax formed again in 1981 by rhythm guitarist Scott Ian. Of course, is married to his father-in-law, was the legend Meatloaf, bassist Dan Leica. They again are considered one of the leaders of thrash metal scene in the 80s and part of that big four. They were also one of the first thrash metal bands, along with Overkill and Nuclear Assault, to come from the East Coast, which most of the other thrash metal from the West Coast, and they are still going. So their debut album was this one, A Fistful of Metal, and it was released in January 1984 by Megaforce Records in the US and Music for Nations internationally. This is the only band to feature the original frontman Neil Turbin and original bassist Dan Leica, who were replaced by Mark Fellon, and then of course Joey Belladonna came in and Frank Bello went on the bass. Former original guitarist Greg Walls claimed that Anthrax ripped him off, as he claimed that he wrote the material on the album, but that's for another day. So who plays on this one? We've got Neil Turbin on the vocals, Dan Spitz on lead guitar and rhythm guitar on track 3. Scott Ian plays rhythm guitar, except on 18. Danny Leica on bass, Charlie Benante on drums, and the production was John Zazula, who's the executive producer, and Carl Candy was the producer. First track on this one is called Deathrider. Certainly got that pulsating speed metal. Okay, Neil Turbin is certainly no Joey Belladonna, but I've heard Joey Belladonna sing this song and his vocal is better, but this is a really strong track to open up the album. Metal Thrashing Mad. I mean, Turbin did have a great voice, but and it's got some really nice vocals on this. Then they do a version of Alice Cooper's I'm 18. It's not a bad version of it. I think Neil did a good job on the vocals. Then we get a track called Panic, another song that's got some driving riffs. Very good vocal from Neil Turbin. I like that track actually, it's pretty good. Then we get Subjugator, one of the best tracks on the album in my eyes. Very melodic, some nice guitar work here. It's not all about thrash bang speed, it's got some nice melodic work on that one. Soldiers of Metal. The high notes on this, Neil certainly hits them. The rhythms are practically the same, but there's some good little guitar licks on here from Dan Spitz. Death from Above, another ripping guitar solo on that. Solid track. Anthrax, this is a classic track. I've heard Joey sing this. In all honesty, I think Joey's version is a little bit better, but this is still a good track. Across the River, now this is an instrumental track. I like it, it's very short. It's a nice little bit of sort of interplay between Scott and Dan. Let me get my favourite track on here. It's called Howling Furies. This is proper heavy metal, more heavy metal than thrash metal. It's got some great riffing in it, some great drumming. Really like that song. That was the last song on the album. I think this is a really strong debut album. Although they were still in their infancy, they delivered a strong album. It's not perfect, of course, and it took them a little while to really get going. Again, I don't think it was until Joey Belladonna joined the band that they really did get into the groove. The guitar work is really good, and I think Scott Ian is a really good guitarist. It's very basic stuff, thrash metal, but it is very tight and very solid. It's got a good structure. The songs on here. Again, it is not a bad album. I don't mind this one. So that's what I thought. What did the critics go for? Now, critical reception of Fistful of Metal again was mixed. Xavier Russell of Kerrang called it a great debut album with songs played at 100 miles an hour, which could have been slightly more original. Writing in the Encyclopedia of Music, Colin Larkin called the album the cover art tasteless, but commented the album small but steady commercial performance. AllMusic Steve Huey said that Anthrax had not found its distinctive style yet, which was right, sounding more like Judas Priest cover band. Huey found they're utilising heavy metal stereotypes, and opinion fans would find the record off-putting. Martin Popoff again praised for the well-produced sound and almost operatic anti-thrash vocals from Turbin, considering the album was responsible for putting New York back on the metal map and quality back in the books of bruising and uncompromising underground metal. The term thrash metal was used for the first time in this genre by Kerrang journalist Malcolm Dome, the great Malcolm Dome, referring to the song Metal Thrashing Mad. So what were the stars? AllMusic gave it a 2, Collector's Guide gave it an 8 out of 10, the Encyclopedia of Popular Music 2, and the Rolling Stone Album Guide gave it 2. So let's have a look at the nuts bolts of this one. Song quality, really good songs on this. A lot of thought went into these songs. So on for song quality, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. Production, considering this is their first album, the production is pretty good. It's well structured. Yeah, I think that does it sound dated? A little bit, but it's still got that heavy groove to it. So I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. Reception, again, very mixed. I don't remember hearing this one, so I can't really comment on it. I mean, I didn't really hear much until I heard I Am the Law, but looking at what people said, and you've got people like Martin Popoff and Malcolm Dome, who are truly legends. So they liked it, but 1 or 2 didn't. So I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. Cover design, it's not the best cover. It's making a statement, I suppose. But never judge a book by its cover. So I'm going to give that a total 3 out of 5. So for Fistful of Metal by Anthrax gives us a total of 13 as well. Draw. Okay, both pioneering thrash metal albums. Both have good merits and have got bad merits. But today I am going to go with Fistful of Metal by Anthrax, on the thing that I think the Slayer album is a little bit sluggish and one-dimensional. A bit more structure in the songs, and I think it would have been a proper draw. But as I said, that I think a Fistful of the first Slayer album just sounded a little bit amateurish, and when you listen to it now, both of them, you think these were very important albums to the thrash metal genre. A lot of bands were inspired like them. You know, the Big Four did inspire a lot of thrash metal bands, but they both deserve it to be spoken about, because you know, this is at the beginning of a new genre of heavy metal music. Okay, that's what I think, but what do you think? Love to hear your thoughts on these two albums. So, simple. Which one do you prefer? Put it in the comments below. There'll be a poll on all social media as well. Some of them there's not a poll. Just put it in underneath the in the comments boxes. But the community, there'll be a vote on there, and of course tonight on live stream. Okay, that's all for this one. I'll be back a little bit later, and it'll be pick and mix. And this week we are having a stroll down on the sidewalk, which means it's the US top 10 singles. And today we're looking at the top 10 singles on the 12th of January 1981 in the United States. So join me for that. This is the first time you've actually watched this channel, because you're into thrash metal. We have got a little bit of thrash metal on the channel. We've got Megadeth, we've got Venom, but I like to cover all genres, even though I'm not a great fan of thrash metal generally, but I do like the odd album here and there. So I always give every genre of the respect that it deserves. So join me for that later. Bye for now.